In 2018, the Philippines did something bold. The country took a stand against the global plastic waste trade. For years, developed countries like Canada had been quietly dumping their waste under the label of recyclables. But in reality, it was rotting trash, plastic, and hazardous materials. After months of protests and public outcry, the Philippine government decided to send 69 containers of foreign waste back to Canada, forcing the world to take notice. But this wasn't just about Canada and the Philippines. It revealed something far more sinister, a pattern. Every year, millions of tons of waste are exported from rich nations to poor ones. Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, under the same false promise, recycling. And this is where the global waste problem begins, not just in one country, but across entire regions you've probably never heard of, until their rivers start choking and their children start coughing. Tons of waste vanish daily from the streets of cities like London, New York, and Berlin. Out of sight? Yes. Out of harm's way? Absolutely not, because it doesn't disappear but gets shipped off to places where land is cheaper, labor is cheaper, and lives are treated like they're cheaper too. It's poisoning rivers in Jakarta, killing marine life in Vietnam, and leaching chemicals into farmland outside Manila. These countries didn't create this trash, but they are drowning in it. In 2025, global plastic waste generation is expected to reach approximately 460 million tons annually, and if nothing changes, we're on track to more than double that by 2050. What rich countries call recycling is often a glorified dumping scheme. Instead of handling their own trash, countries like the US, UK, and Germany ship it off, labeled as recyclables, to poorer nations. But what arrives at the other end is more than often contaminated, non-recyclable plastic, e-waste laced with toxins, and even medical waste. It's legal, but it's also a loophole-heavy, profit-driven system that hides the dirtiest consequences of consumerism under the shiny label of sustainability. Countries like Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and Malaysia are among the top receivers of this waste. In 2022, non-OECD countries, mostly in Southeast Asia, imported around 2 million metric tons of plastic waste and scrap. China was once the leading importer, but its ban on waste imports in 2018 led to a shift in trade patterns. Why Southeast Asia? These countries are not chosen because they're equipped, but because they're vulnerable. They had weaker regulations, desperate economies, and no real power to say no. So they were forced to absorb the global waste. According to an OECD 2024 report, OECD countries were responsible for 87% of global plastic waste exports. According to a 2024 Clean Hub study, just 10 high-income, developed countries are responsible for 71% of all global plastic waste exports. And it doesn't stop at trash. These countries have also outsourced their dirtiest industries. For example, the UK cut domestic emissions by 47% from 1990 to 2020, but keeps adding back in outsourced emissions through global trade and waste offshoring. Factories have moved to places like Bangladesh, Vietnam, and Cambodia, reducing emissions on paper but increasing pollution on the ground elsewhere. And the real cost? It's not measured in dollars. It's measured in kids growing up next to piles of burning plastic, toxic smoke, poisoned water, and contaminated soil. As of 2024, only 9% of global plastic waste was actually recycled. 22% was mismanaged, dumped, burned, or leaked into nature. Environmental watchdogs like Greenpeace and Break Free from Plastic have repeatedly documented how packaging from global brands like Coca-Cola, Nestlé, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and Colgate-Palmolive is found in illegal dump sites and waterways in countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, and Vietnam. You'd think this would be illegal, and technically it should be. International agreements like the Basel Convention restrict hazardous waste exports. But there's a loophole. If you label it as recyclable, even if it's not, you can ship it legally. And that's exactly what happens. Behind all of this is a well-oiled profit machine. Waste brokers buy trash for pennies, repackage it as recyclables, and sell it to importers in countries with weak oversight. The global plastic recycling industry is currently valued at $48 billion in 2024 and projected to grow to $69 billion by 2029. But things are starting to change. Indonesia sent hundreds of waste containers back to their source. The Philippines publicly confronted Canada in a years-long dispute over illegally dumped trash. And the grassroots protests are gaining momentum, forcing governments to act. But for every container sent back, dozens more are quietly accepted. The problem isn't solved, it has just started to be seen. Systemic change is crucial, but it doesn't start in boardrooms or parliaments. It starts with pressure from people like us. It's easy to feel helpless, but individual action does matter, especially when it's collective. Here's what you can do today. Support transparency, buy less, reuse more, push for policy, and that's where EcoCreds comes in. EcoCreds enables waste management organizations to verify and tokenize the plastic they recover that companies can purchase to offset their plastic footprint. Ending this crisis starts with uncovering the truth and acting on it. Let's stop exporting guilt and start owning our waste. Follow at EcoCreds on X to learn more.